Book of Heaven, Volume 12, Part 16. April 15th, 1920. Cause of the Pains of Jesus. The Love of Souls. I was lamenting to my sweet Jesus about my painful state, saying to him, "Tell me, my love, where are you? Which way did you take in going away, so that I may follow you? Let me see the marks of your steps, so that step by step, with certainty, I may find you. Ah, Jesus, without you I can endure no more. But though you are far away, I send you my kisses. I kiss that hand that no longer embraces me. I kiss that mouth that no longer speaks to me. I kiss that face that I no longer see. I kiss those feet that no longer walk toward me, but turn their steps somewhere else. Ah, Jesus, how sad is my state! What cruel end was awaiting me!" While I was saying this and much more nonsense, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, calm yourself, for the one who lives in my will, all points are sure ways in order to find me. My will fills everything. Whatever way she might take, there is no fear that she might not find me. Ah, my daughter, I feel your painful state in my heart. I feel the current of pain that passed between me and my mamma being repeated to me. She was crucified because of my pains. I was crucified because of hers. But the cause of all this, what was it? The love of souls. For love of them, my dear mamma bore all my pains, and even my death. And I, for love of souls, bore all her pains, to the point of depriving her of me. Oh, how much it cost my love, and her maternal love, to deprive my inseparable mamma of me. But the love of souls triumphed over everything. Now your state of victim, to which you submitted yourself, it was for love of souls, and for love of them you accepted all the pains that have unfolded in your life. The cause has been souls, as well as the sad times that are coming, because of which my divine justice prevents me from being with you in a familiar way, in order to let more favorable times flow, rather than stormy, and keep you on earth. It is because of souls. If it were not for love of them, your exile would be ended, and you would not have the pain of seeing yourself without me, nor would I have the pain of seeing you so tormented because of my privation. Therefore patience, and let it be that also in you the love of souls may triumph to the last. May 1st, 1920. The sanctity of the one who lives in the divine will is the continued glory be. The one who lives in the divine will, living up high, must bear the pains of those who live down below. My misery makes itself felt more, and in my interior I was saying, "My Jesus, what life is this?" And he, without giving me time to say anything else, immediately answered, "My daughter, for the one who lives in my will, her sanctity has only one point. It is the continued glory be, followed by, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. There is nothing that does not give glory to God, complete in everything, always stable, always the same, always queen, without ever changing. This sanctity is not subject to setbacks, to losses. It is to always reign. So its foundation is the glory be. Its prerogative is the as it was in the beginning, and so forth. As I continue to lament about his privations and the subtractions of suffering, while he gives it abundantly to others, my always lovable Jesus came out from within my interior, and leaning his head on my shoulder, all afflicted, told me, "My daughter, the one who lives in my will lives up high, and the one who lives up high can look down below with more clarity, and must take part in the decisions, in the afflictions, and in everything that befits people who live up high. Don't you see this in the world? Sometimes father and mother, and sometimes also an elder child, is capable of taking part in the decisions, in the sorrows of the parents, while they are under the nightmare of sorrowful pains, of uncertainties, of intrigues, of losses. The other little children know nothing about it. Rather, they let them play and continue the course of ordinary family life, not wanting to embitter those tender lives, without a useful purpose for them and for their parents. The same happens in the order of grace. One who is little and still growing lives down below, and therefore purges are necessary, and the necessary means in order to make him grow in sanctity. It would be as if one wanted to talk about business, intrigues, pains, to the little ones of the family. They would be stunned without understanding a thing. But the one who lives in my will, living up high, must bear the pains of those who live down below, see their dangers, help them, and take such serious decisions as to make one tremble, while they remain tranquil. Therefore calm yourself, and in my will we shall live life in common, and together with me you shall take part in the pains of the human family. You shall watch over the great storms that shall arise again, and while they play in the midst of danger, you, together with me, shall cry over their misfortune." May 15th, 1920. The divine will forms the complete crucifixion in the soul. I was lamenting to my sweet Jesus, saying to him, "Where are your promises? No more cross, no more likeness to you. Everything has vanished, and there is nothing left for me but to cry over my sorrowful end." And Jesus, moving, told me in my interior, "My daughter, my crucifixion was complete. And do you know why? Because it was done in the eternal will of my Father. In this will, the cross became so long and so wide as to embrace all centuries and penetrate into every heart, present, past, and future, in such a way that I remained crucified in each heart of creature. This divine will put nails through all of my interior, into my desires, into my affections, and heartbeats. I can say that I did not have a life of my own, but the life of the eternal will that enclosed in me all creatures, and that wanted me to answer for everything. My crucifixion could never have been complete, and so extended as to embrace all, if the eternal volition had not been the actor. I want that in you also the crucifixion be complete and extended to all. This is the reason for the continuous call into my will, for the spurs to bring the whole human family before the Supreme Majesty, and to admit, in the name of all, the acts that they do not do. The oblivion of yourself, the lack of self-reflections, are nothing other than the nails that my will puts. My will does not know how to do incomplete and small things. In forming a circle around the soul, it wants her within itself, and extending her within the whole sphere of its eternal volition, it places on her the seal of its completion. My will empties the interior of the creature of all that is human, and places in it all that is divine. And in order to be more sure, it keeps sealing all of her interior with as many nails for as many human acts as can have life in the creature, substituting them with as many divine acts. In this way, it forms in her the true crucifixion, and not for a time, but for her entire life. May 24th, 1920. The acts done in the divine will shall be the defenders of the divine throne, not only in the present time, but until the end of the centuries. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, the acts done in my will leave the human acts behind, and identifying themselves with my divine acts, they rise up, even into heaven, circulate in everyone, embrace all centuries, all points, and all creatures. And since they remain fixed in my will, these acts are, and shall be, the defenders of my throne, for each offense that creatures give me, not only in the present time, but until the end of the centuries. And rising to my defense, they shall make the reparations counter to the offenses that creatures shall give. The acts done in my will have the virtue of multiplying themselves according to the need and the circumstances that my glory requires. What shall be the happiness of the soul when she finds herself up there in heaven, and sees her acts done in my will as defenders of my throne, that, having a continuous echo of reparation, shall reject the echo of the offenses that come from the earth. Therefore, for the soul who lives in my will on earth, her glory in heaven shall be different from that of the other blessed. The others shall draw all their contentments from me, while these souls shall not only draw them from me, but shall have their own little rivers within my own sea, since by living in my volition, they themselves formed them on earth within my sea. It is right that they have the little rivers of happiness and of contentments in heaven. How beautiful are these rivers within my sea! They pour into me, and I into them. It shall be an enchanting sight, and which all the blessed shall remain astounded. May 28th, 1920. The acts done in the divine will enter the sphere of eternity and run ahead of the human acts. I was offering myself in the holy sacrifice of the Mass together with Jesus, so that I too might undergo his same consecration. And he, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, enter into my will, so that you may find yourself in all the hosts, not only present, but also future. and in this way you shall undergo, together with me, as many consecrations as I undergo. In each host I place one life of mine, and I want another one in return. But how many do not give it to me? Others receive me. I give myself to them, but they do not give themselves to me, and my love remains suffering, hampered, and suffocated, and without requital. Therefore, in my will, come to undergo all the consecrations that I undergo, and I shall find in each host the requital of your life, and not only for as long as you remain on earth, but also when you are in heaven. In fact, since you have been consecrated in advance while being in my will on earth, just as I shall undergo consecrations until the end, so shall you undergo them. And I shall find, unto the last day, the requital of your life. Then he added, the acts done in my will are always those that excel over all, and have supremacy over everything. In fact, having been done in my will, they enter the sphere of eternity, and taking the first places in it, they leave all human acts behind, running always ahead. Nor can whether they are done before or after have any influence, whether in one era or in another, or whether they are small or great. It is enough that they be done in my will for them to be always among the first, and to run ahead of all the human acts. They are similar to oil, placed together with other edibles, be these even of greater value, even gold or silver, or foods of great substance. They all remain underneath, while the oil excels on top of them. It never lowers itself to be under. Be it even in minimal quantity, with its little mirror of light, it seems to say, I am here to excel over everything, nor do I band together with other things or blend with them. In the same way, the acts done in my volition, because they are done in my will, become light, but a light that is bound to and identified with the eternal light. So they do not mix with the human acts. Rather, they have the virtue of making the human acts turn into divine. Therefore they leave everything behind, while they are the first among all. June 2nd, 1920. Jesus felt the pain of the separation that man had caused with sin. Continuing in my usual state, and recollecting myself in prayer, I saw an abyss within me, of which I could not see the bottom. And in the middle of this abyss of depth and width, my sweet Jesus, afflicted and taciturn. I could not comprehend how I saw him in me, and I felt far away from him, as if he did not exist for me. My heart remained tortured, and I felt the torment of a cruel death. And this not once, but who knows how many times I find myself in this abyss, as though separated from my all, from my life. Now, while my heart was dripping blood, my always lovable Jesus, coming out of this abyss, surrounded my neck with his arms, placing himself behind my shoulders, and told me, "My beloved daughter, you are my true portrait." Oh, how many times my moaning humanity found itself in these tortures. It was identified with the divinity. Even more, they were one single thing. And while they were one, I felt the torment of the separation, of the abyss of the divinity, because while it enveloped me inside and out, I, being identified with it, I felt far away. My poor humanity was to pay the penalty and the separation that abusing humanity had caused with sin. And in order to join it to the divinity, I was to suffer all the pain of their separation. But each instant of separation was for me a ruthless death. This is the cause of your pains and of the abyss that you see. It is likeness to me. Also in these stormy times, humanity runs far away from me, as though in reckless flight, and you must feel the pain of its separation to be able to join it to me. It is true that your state is too painful, but it is always a pain of your Jesus. And I, in order to give you strength, shall hold you tightly from behind your shoulders, so that while keeping you safer, I give greater intensity to your pain. In fact, if I kept you in front of me, by merely seeing my arms close to you, your pain would be halved, and my likeness would be achieved later. June 10th, 1920. The humanity of our Lord lived suspended in the air. For the one who lives in the divine will, whatever it does, the soul does. I was feeling very afflicted and all alone, without support from anyone. And my sweet Jesus clasped me in his arms, lifting me up in the air, and told me, "My daughter, when my humanity lived on earth, it lived suspended, halfway between heaven and earth. Having all the earth under me, and all heaven above me, and by living in this way, I tried to draw all the earth into myself, and all heaven, and make them one single thing. Had I wanted to live at the earth's level, I could not have drawn everything into myself, only a few points at the most. It is true that living suspended in the air cost me much. I had no place on which to lean, nor anyone on whom to lean, and only things of strict necessity were given to my humanity. As for the rest, I was always alone, and without any comfort. However, this was necessary. First, because of the nobility of my person, to whom it did not befit living down below, with vile and faulty human supports. Second, because of the great office of redemption, that had to have supremacy over everything. Therefore it befitted me to live up high, above everyone. Now, the one whom I call to my likeness, I place in the same conditions in which I placed my own humanity. Therefore I myself am your prop. My own arms are your support. And as I make you live in my arms, suspended in the air, only things of strict necessity can reach you. For the one who lives in my will, detached from everyone, all for me, anything more than strict necessities are vile things, and a degrading herself from her nobility. And if human supports are given to her, she senses the stench of the human, and she herself drives them away. Then he added, as soon as the soul enters into my will, her volition remains bound with my eternal volition, and even if she does not think about it, since her will has been bound to mine, Whatever my will does, hers does as well. And together with me she runs for the good of all. June 22nd, 1920. The sanctity of the humanity of Jesus was complete absence of self-interest. I was bringing the whole human family to my sweet Jesus, according to my usual way, praying, repairing, substituting in the name of all, for what each one is obliged to do. But while I was doing this, a thought told me, think and pray for yourself. Don't you see in what a pitiful state you have reduced yourself? And I was almost about to do so, when my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior and pulling me to himself, told me, "My daughter, why do you want to move away from my likeness? I never thought about myself. The sanctity of my humanity was complete absence of self-interest. I did nothing for myself, but I did and suffered everything for creatures. My love can be called true, because it is marked by disinterest for my own self. Wherever there is interest, it cannot be said that there is a fount of truth. On the other hand, the soul with no self-interest is the one who comes forward the most. And as she comes forward, the sea of my grace takes her from behind, inundating her in such a way as to make her remain completely submerged, without her thinking about it. On the contrary, one who thinks about herself is last. The sea of my grace is in front of her, and she is the one who has to cross the sea by arm strokes, if she manages at all. In fact, the thought of herself shall create many obstacles for her, such as to strike into her the fear of diving into my sea, and she runs the risk of remaining on the shore. September 2nd, 1920. The martyrdom of love and of pain for Jesus, because of the lack of company of the creature. I live amid continuous privations. At the most, my sweet Jesus makes himself seen and escapes me like a flash. Only Jesus knows the martyrdom of my poor heart. Now I was thinking about the love with which he suffered so much for us, and my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, my first martyrdom was love, and love gave birth for me to my second martyrdom, pain. Each pain was preceded by immense seas of love. But when love saw itself alone, abandoned by the majority of creatures, I raved, I agonized, and since my love could find no one to whom to give itself, it concentrated within me, drowning me and giving me such pains that all other pains seemed to me a refreshment compared to these. If I had company in love, I would feel happy, because with company all things acquire happiness. They diffuse, they multiply. Love, close to another love, is happy, be it even a small love, because it finds the one to whom to give itself, the one to whom to make itself known, the one to whom it can give life with its own love. But when it is close to one who does not love it, who despises it, who does not care about it, it is quite unhappy, because it does not find the way to communicate itself and to give him life. Beauty close to ugliness feels dishonored, and it seems that they shun each other, because what is beautiful hates ugliness, and ugliness feels uglier close to beauty. But what is beautiful, close to another beautiful, is happy, and they communicate their beauty to each other. The same for all other things. What good is it for a teacher to be learned, to have studied so much, if he finds no pupil to whom to teach? Oh, how unhappy he is, not finding anyone to whom to teach so much doctrine. What good is it for a doctor to have comprehended the art of medicine, if no sick person calls him to display his ability? What good is it for a rich person to be rich, if no one approaches him? And as he remains alone in spite of his riches, not finding the way to make them known and to communicate them to someone, this one shall probably die of starvation. Only company is what makes everyone happy. It allows good to be carried out. It makes it grow. Isolation makes everything unhappy and sterile. Ah, my daughter, oh, how my love suffers this isolation. And those few who keep me company form my refreshment and my happiness. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 12, Part 16. Fiat.